see you there.
Something big is going on here.
From hunting ghosts to Bigfoot.
Paranormal, UFOs, true crime, and more.
We won't just be spouting articles.
I was researching for your entertainment.
The beginning of a new world.
The best guac you'll ever fucking eat.
True story.
It's basically like one day you walk outside and you see that the ants are playing with matches.
This is the Black Cat Report. See you on the other side.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Black Cat Report. My name is Gil, and with me today is the awesome co-hosts, Selena.
Hello.
Betsabe.
Meow.
And Joey.
Heyo.
Today we kind of wanted to break away just a little bit from the script and kind of bring you, our lovely listeners, into the mix. Kind of give you an idea of why we're doing this show, and kind of share with you some of our own experiences. You know, these are the conversations that before we decided to do a podcast, this is kind of the inspiration behind it. You know, sitting around, hearing all the friends like talk about things that they've experienced, that they've seen, that they've been a part of. And yeah, I don't know, just kind of wanted to bring everybody behind the scenes and actually kind of give them a taste for, you know, what we do, who we are, and how we got to be here behind the Black Cat Report.
Our spooky experiences. Where I've heard Selena has a lot of them.
Yes.
Yeah, so I grew up in California near the projects in a one-story house that was built in the 1930s. My family had lived there for a generation before my sister and I, and I'm just going to go right into what the layout of the house was. Upon entering the front door, you find yourself in the dining area with the kitchen to the left and the living room ahead. Then there's a doorway in the living room that opens up to a hallway going left to right. On the right side was my sister's bedroom, my grandparents' old room. On the left was my room, my uncle's old room. There was a third bedroom connecting from my room, my mom's room. My sister, my mom, and I all used to share that bedroom when my sister and I were kids. There was a side door in that room that leads to the backyard. You can see into my room from that back door. That's important later. Well, one of the things that I experienced while I was living in that house was footsteps. I would hear footsteps in the hallway constantly, and they were light little footsteps. I didn't see what was causing it for a while. I was sitting on my couch and I caught a glimpse of a little boy with a striped shirt and tan brown pants with a bowl cut running down the hallway. And my uncle had happened to be over, the same uncle that grew up in that house. He saw the look on my face and he asked me, "Did you see that little kid?" He said, "I used to see that kid all the time when I was younger." And I asked him to describe what he was wearing, and he said the exact same thing that I had seen. And it wasn't a scary presence. It was just a presence. It was one of those things that I got used to living in that house. My doorknob would rattle randomly. I had a friend over and we were home alone and the doorknob started rattling and she got really scared. I didn't want to open the door because of superstition. My grandma taught me better than that. If it's something's trying to get in, it's probably like some kind of demon and you don't want to let it in.
That abuela knowledge.
So I just told my friend, "Oh, ignore it. That happens all the time." She never came over again.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I would be gone for the rest of the time. Like, oh, well, yeah, you know, her mom asked her when she gets back, "Oh, how was hanging over at Selena's?"
I now believe that there are spirits among us, Mom. I have witnessed things, Mother. No. Yeah, it was kind of normal to me. Like, there was something like poltergeist activity, I would say, because doors would swing open, the shutters and things would like slam, the cabinets would open. It just became kind of something that was normal. Like my mom would say, oh, I really want to close the blinds, but I'm too lazy, and then the blinds would close.
Seems like you had a ghost butler in some parts.
There were multiple things in that house, and there was like, I always felt this like really dark presence in my grandparents' room. They were like old school Catholics, so they had all kinds of idols and stuff, and a lot of people believe that idol worship can lead to people worshiping demons, because they can take the form of that, or they can like live in that and then take the prayer and all that to get stronger and all of that. So my grandparents didn't believe that. They're just old school Catholics, so they're like, yeah, no, all the saints, all the, you know,
they'll protect us.
Yeah. But that was the darkest presence that I felt was in their room.
They were doing a breakdown of the top 10 most haunted churches in the world. And the church, which I quizzed you about, I was like, what church did you go to when you were growing up? That church is the most haunted church in the world. So that just kind of like really drove it home for me, where it was just like, oh shit.
Yeah, dude.
Like your childhood church.
I had panic attacks at that school. I also used to just, during Sunday school, I would either be reading like Captain Underpants under the thing.
What a good book.
Or like,
Classic.
because like my friend would bring them to me. My mom would be like, I'm not buying you that. You know, because it's stupid.
That book's
like,
demonic. Come home.
No.
No normal person would wear their underpants outside of their pants, okay?
Yeah. No. Yeah, I would always fake sick, and my mom would have to come pick me up. She was always really annoyed because I would be better, you know, once she picked me up.
Magically.
I would like lay my head on the metal like door thing there while the sun was hitting it, so that I would get like a fever.
Nice.
Yeah, I had a system.
Listen up, kids.
I had a system. I'd be like, I feel hot. I feel literally like, and then they're like, oh my god, you're burning up, and I'm like, heh. Oh, but yeah, back to the haunted house. One of the things that we experienced were doppelgangers. That was another thing that was happening in the house. The first time it happened to my grandfather. My grandparents lived with us in that house when we were growing up. My sister was at her 6th grade, like, grad night, so she was out at Six Flags for the night. Well, my grandfather comes walking out of his bedroom. He's gonna come out to the living room, but he looks into my sister's room and he goes in there. And my mom, my tita, my abuelita, and me were like sitting there like, what is he doing? And he finally comes out and we're like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I was saying goodnight to Paulina, my sister. He's like, she called me over there and I went over to talk to her and I told her goodnight and gave her a kiss goodnight and all that. And we were like, she hasn't been home for hours. She's not going to be home for hours. And he's like, no. And then took us to the room and there was nobody in there.
Wow.
That room that she was in used to be my uncle's room. A lot of the rooms we switched around and moved in a lot, my sister and I. There was that incident with the doppelganger. He was really shaken up by it. But the other ones happened to my sister. And she hadn't lived with us for a while, and she moved back home and was working at Home Depot for a little bit, and at that point she was living in my grandparents' old room. Well, she had gotten home walked around the back to see if she could look into my room to see if I was home because she wanted to scare me. So she like went to the back of the house to that backside door and looked into my room, and when she did, she saw me sitting on the floor at the edge of my bed, staring like off to the side, looking up at the wall. And she like called my name, and she said that I slightly turned, but I didn't look at her. So she was like, oh, I can totally get her. So she ran to the front of the house, used her key, unlocked the front door, and then like ran up to my room and threw the door open and like looked at the floor at the foot of my bed and yelled, boo! I was laying in bed with a bunch of like Gatorade and like snacks around me because I was hungover.
I believe this.
And like you could tell that like I had been laying like that for hours, and there was no way I could have jumped into bed that way. And she like looked up at me and she asked me if I moved, and I said no, and then she like looked at me and saw that like there was no way that I could have just moved, and then she started like hyperventilating and crying. So we went outside.
Oh my god.
And we waited until someone else got home. And then another time it happened, I was at work and she had just gotten off of work. She got into the house and was going to start making something to eat, but she heard me in the other room like singing, like humming. So that was back when it was my room on the left and her room was on the right. So she goes from the living room to the hallway, goes to try and like open my door. It's like opened a crack and she can see me standing humming, like looking up at the ceiling. And she pushes the door open. She's like, hey, do you want something to eat? And I like looked at her and then walked straight into the closet.
What the fuck?
And she got like freaked out, and she was like, what are you doing? And she opened the curtain to the closet, and it was stacked with shit, like just storage. There was no way that a person could fit in there. She went outside and sat on the front steps.
And reevaluated life for a while.
Yeah.
No, she just waited until I got home. So she's experienced that. And another thing that I had experienced in that house was shadow people. I was supposed to be learning how to play the guitar, but I was eating pizza with the person that was supposed to be teaching me how to play guitar.
Naturally.
And I was sitting at the dining room table, and from where I was sitting at the dining room table, I could see into my bedroom down the hallway. And I was sitting there eating pizza. The guy was sitting next to me, and all of a sudden, like, I noticed I was, like, staring at something, and it was this black, like, spot on the ground in the doorway.
Like a portal?
It just looked like a black, like, ink spot. And I was like, because I was trying to figure out what was making the shadow or whatever, and it didn't, like, make sense, so I just kept staring at it, and then it just kind of, like, pulled up into like a crouching figure, and then it just stood up, and it was taller than the door frame, and it was like just this black like figure, and it kind of looked like it looked left, it looked right, and then it started walking towards the door to the third bedroom, my mom's bedroom. And I was in shock. I was just like, my jaw was hanging open. And then the guy just jumps up next to me and he's like, "Did you fucking see that? What the hell was that thing?" And I was like, "I don't know." And then he's like got up and started chasing it. And I freaked out, so I started running after him, trying to get him to like not chase it.
There's like two schools of thought in that. You're like, one where it's just like, I gotta go see what that is. And then you're just like, haven't you seen horror movies and paranormal movies before?
Yeah, like he followed it up to the doorway of the bedroom, and then it just ran through the side door out to the backyard, and he wanted to chase it outside, and I blocked him from doing it. I was too freaked out.
Okay, so I've never seen a shadow figure, but I've heard a number of people's like reports around like staticky looking shadow figures, or like stick men even kind of things, or just like similar types of, I guess, like apparitions to things like that. And one thing that I've noticed that I don't feel like has been super brought up, but I guess how I've always pictured it in my mind, when it appeared, when it came out of this like ink blot portal thing in the ground, you said that it like looked left, looked right, and then like kind of like picked a direction and went that way. Like, did it kind of look like it was trying to assess like where the heck it was? Like,
yes.
Did it like come up and it was just kind of like, all right, I'm here, and then just takes off? Because like,
yes, it looked like it was trying to figure out where it was, or like trying to orient itself. It looked one way, it looked the other way, and then it was like, I'm going to this doorway, and then it started walking that way. It didn't seem to like see us.
Yeah.
Until we were chasing it. Then it got to the back wall of the room, and it did the thing again, like looked both ways, and then it ran out the side door.
There was a recent, not to like go too far off or whatever, but like one that I remember pretty vividly or whatever. I remember well from somebody's story. There was a recent report of this guy who like came out recently. He used to work at a nuclear weapons silo, like in the US. Super secret, ultra lockdown weapons silo where it's just like these massive, 10-foot like thick cement doors that close behind him on his shifts, like that kind of a situation. And he said this like staticky shadow figure appeared one day, and there was like all this, like camera footage, and people saw it and like all this kind of crap, but it just like appeared in the base. And like that was something that he explained there, but he never, I wish I could have like asked him the same question, because I was like, every time I hear about these things, it's always like they kind of like are confused. It's like they're just like dropped into the situation, and they're like, all right, wait, okay, I need to go this way. And like you said, like orient, like that's the perfect word. Like they're just like, where do I go? Okay, I'm here. Like they're more overwhelmed by popping up in this dimension, if you will, than they are where they're at. Almost, they're like, okay, whatever, there's people there, I just need to figure out where I'm at real quick. Okay, I'm good. And then they just like take off.
Yeah. I mean, if they can see, like if they're there and they can see something, like see people, don't really seem bothered by it. They're kind of just like, whatever. I mean, when they get there, they must have been taught by their parents well to look both ways. As soon as they came into the house, they were just like left, right, and then they got out of the door, and they're like left, right, okay, go, and then they ran. So it's like something had to be teaching them, like, oh, okay, cool, like to orient themselves when they get to this place. Because I mean, think if you got dropped in a random place like this, and you're just like, I'm in this person's home.
Where's the entrance? Where's the exit?
Yeah, that's the last thing you look for when you go into a place. Like if you get randomly dropped into a place, you're just like, oh, I'm in somebody's home.
Yeah.
Cool. I probably should leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, some other stuff that started happening, I have depression, and my depression was starting to get really bad, and I noticed that, like, as it started to get bad, the kind of energy in the house was getting worse. And I had my cat Charlie, who was a sweetheart. Yeah. But he always slept with me, and at one point I was probably, I think I was 15. I was like 15 or 16 years old, and my grandparents came to visit again. So they were staying in their bedroom. It was directly across the hall from my room, and my mom would always go to bed before I did, so she would go into her room, which was the one built off of my room, and then I'd, do whatever I was doing, go to bed super late, and then, yeah, well, one night, for some reason, I woke up and it was 3 a.m. and my door was wide open.
It's always 3 a.m.
Yeah, it was really
Isn't that
creepy.
the devil's hour? Isn't that what they say?
Yeah. And my door was wide open, and I was, like, really freaked out because I was afraid of the dark. I had my light on, and, like, all I could see was, like, pitch black down the hallway. Like, I couldn't even see the door to the room, to my grandparents' room. It just looked like a black hole. So I, like, jumped up out of bed, like, slammed the door shut, and, like, went to my mom's room and asked her, like, why didn't you close the door? And she's like, I've been sleeping. I've been in bed before you. Like, I've been in bed for hours before you did. Like, like, I haven't moved. I haven't touched your door. And then she's like, maybe your tito came in and, like, wanted to look, like, check on you. And I was like, okay. And that's what I thought happened. But then it kept happening every night. And then my grandparents went back to Mexico, and it kept happening. And I got really freaked out, so I started locking the door. And then instead of those small footsteps that I would hear occasionally, I started hearing, like, stomping footsteps from my grandparents' room coming down to my door, and then it would be 3 heavy knocks. And I thought I was losing my shit, but my cat would jump every time, like, there was a knock on the door. So I was like, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm not just hearing things. And, like, my doorknob would rattle. I would wake up and, like, my bed would be shaking. Just, like, I would end up staying up all night because if I tried to go to sleep, I would have these terrible nightmares, and then I would wake up to the knocking on my door at 3 a.m. and the thudding, and it would be running up and down the hallway, like, really heavy, running up and down the hallway and then stopping at my door, and then just, like, a knock, and then, like, running up and down, and then 3 knocks. And, like, it was terrifying. I didn't sleep for a long time. I would go to bed at 6:30 when the sun was coming up. We ended up having to get the house blessed. It happened twice, they blessed it. And it had been blessed before. But it didn't do anything. It was still there. Like, I'm not religious, but I even, like, went to the church for help. My mom said I should, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, at that point, it's like, what do you have to lose?
Exactly.
Try anything you can so you can actually sleep. Getting 3 knocks at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Every morning, every evening.
Did anybody else, like, experience or hear, like, the knocks and stuff in the house or the footsteps? Do you know if any, like, Paulina or your mom or Tito or, like, anybody, if they ever heard anything like that? I know your uncle used to see the same little boy in the striped shirt and stuff like that, but was it associated with, like, knocks? Do you think it was the little boy? Like, what are
I don't think it was the little boy. The footsteps were so much heavier.
Okay.
And my sister sleeps like a rock. And my mom's room was pretty big, and her bed was pretty, like a distance. So it was just me and my cat.
Oh, Charlie.
Yeah,
I got, like, I know y'all. All right, so we're all cat owners. Not surprising. Well,
Correct.
but
We
we're all.
are.
I don't want to say owners, but you know, in the
We are cat
parlance-
slaves right now, actually.
Cat
Yeah,
parents.
yeah. Parents is a cool word. You know, we're kind of like being a cat parent is kind of like being the parent of like a 19-year-old to like 20-year-old, where it's just like you're just completely indebted to them, and they're kind of going to do whatever the hell they want to do.
And they do things to spite you too. So like, you know,
Exactly.
you could just be sitting there having fun, and then the cat will just be like, you know what? I feel like getting into something devilish today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, that's like always been my thing though, and I'm assuming it's y'all's too. It's like you're home alone or some spooky, creepy stuff happens, and like there's like a knock or there's a boom or there's a sound, and like the first reaction is like, oh shit, and then you like look over at your cat to be like, did you notice that too? And like if they notice that, that's when your heart fully drops. You're just like, okay, now I'm really screwed. Okay, this is bad. like Dada saw this. Oh god. You know?
Mhm.
Or sometimes when the cat will just stand there and look off at some place, like in a corner, and you're sitting there and it's pitch quiet, and you just see your cat turn and look in the corner for about a minute, and you kind of like, oh.
I really.
So that's where I should be looking, and probably something's going to happen.
I really hope that like cats like eventually we're gonna like learn to actually just full on conversate with them, you know, in our respective languages, and like cats are just gonna be like, oh god, yeah, we've been doing that for years just to mess with you. Yeah,
I can't
no.
believe you guys have been falling for that. You think we see things?
We've been able to read English for like hundreds of years, so like yeah, we saw all your memes. Yeah, no, we just keep this up. We're just gonna like.
We were worshipped back in the day for a reason.
Yeah.
The Egyptians worshipped us.
Who do you think invented hieroglyphics? Like,
Not the Egyptians.
Sidetrack.
What did they do?
well, like what denominations, what religions, or like backgrounds? Like
Catholic and Christian.
Catholic and Christian. Okay.
Yeah.
Were you there for when they did it, or did you see?
Yeah,
like, what
they
did?
got holy water and like smudged it on the house, and like everybody was like holding hands and praying, and like
Was
they
it-
were like burning sage and like, you know.
Was it everybody in your house, or did they have like more people come over? Or...
It was the church.
Oh, the
that
whole.
came.
How many people?
Not like the whole church, but it was probably about like 10, 15 people.
Oh wow.
And to kind of backtrack, that church doesn't have the best reputation if you look it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think those priests are very good at
Yeah.
getting rid of ghosts, especially if their church was the most haunted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go away, you ghost.
It didn't really go away until I felt like I just got fed up. And I was just like, I would just kind of like yell back or like cuss at it or whatever, and just like try to go back to sleep and stuff. And like after that, I kind of started to like die down because I guess I wasn't as afraid anymore.
I can just see the ghost coming up, and like it's like getting on your nerves and angry at it, and then one day it comes up and you're just like, can you just leave me alone, please? And he's just like, oh, well, I see how this is. And then slowly comes back, and then like the last day, it just comes up to your door and knocks 3 times. You're like, go away. And he just goes, guess I'll just go. I don't have anywhere else to haunt.
Yeah.
I've always felt like I've never had a like personal, like I would say like ghost situation, you know, but I always kind of imagined just based on like the rest of my life, like I would just have this like mediocre ghost haunt me, you know, like I would like go to like Habitat for Humanity and like buy like a really nice coffee table or something like that, and I would just end up getting this ghost that just pops up. I'm just sitting there like playing PS5, you know what I'm saying, and just like hanging out, and all of a sudden like my beer just moves across the table, like, and I just look over and I'm like, wait, that's not my cat. My cat's on my lap. And then all of a sudden it's just gonna be, no. I'm like, what the fuck is, no, what? Doilies. And I'm like, what the doilies? Doilies. I'm just gonna get this like weird ass ghost that's like obsessed with me using like coasters and doilies on like all of my furniture, and like that's gonna be it. I'm just gonna be like, shut the fuck up. The doilies. Like, shut the fuck doilies.
Don't you have a paranormal experience?
I do, but I don't have like a ghost that like haunted me. Like I feel like mine would be so mediocre. Like it would just be some weird ass poltergeist that's like obsessed with doilies or something. I'm just gonna be like, oh my god, shut up.
Thank you for listening to the Black Cat Report so far. Remember to like and subscribe on your streaming service and follow us on Instagram. If you have a paranormal story or idea you would like us to tell or research into, email us at blackcat.report. Enjoy the rest of the podcast. I have a ghost story from my aunt's house, and I was about, I think, 15 or 16. And as most people know, in the South in the Civil War, they have a lot of ghost stories from that because a lot of the houses were used as hospitals during the Civil War, and a lot of people died, had their bones sawn off, and like crazy things. Yeah, it's just, so where I'm from, in near, I guess it's Fredericksburg, Virginia, Culpeper, where some of the fighting was the heaviest in the Civil War. My aunt had a house in Gordonsville, Orange, that area. They would tell us, we'd go there and you'd feel like just walking in the house and you'd feel your hair stand up and you just feel cold and you wouldn't feel quite right, so you just wouldn't want to go in that house. So we would always walk in. Me and my brother's about 7 years older, so I would say I was probably like 10 and he was 17 at that time. So the first thing that I heard from this house about it is me and my brother were there, and my mom and my aunt and a few other family members were there. And my brother goes up, he's like, hey, I'm going to go up to the bathroom, got to go upstairs to the bathroom, and the bathroom's on the left side. You go up the stairs, bathroom's on the left, there's another bedroom on the left, and then there's a bedroom on the right. And so he went to the bathroom, and everybody was like, okay, cool, we're going outside. So we all went outside, and then my brother told us when he came down, he was like, did anyone call my name? They called me by my name, Jeffrey.
No.
And we're like, oh, no, we weren't in the house. And he's like, something said Jeff, leave. What? Leave.
Ew.
And he's just came down like, are you sure nobody else is in the house? They're trying to play a prank, you know, and you're 10 years old, you're gonna, like me and my cousin would play pranks all the time, on my brother especially. But we were not in the house. And that's not the only story. So he basically that day he was like, okay, we're gonna probably not come back here anymore. My aunts who lived there, they only lived there for 6 months. And this house was built.
That tells you something.
Yeah. And this house was built in the 1700s, I want to say. 1700s.
Oh my God. So that's like
long
haunted.
time. Yeah. And it was on one of the major roads that was used by the cavalry in the Civil War and the marches in the Civil War. So a lot of times there's battles, huge battles in that area. So their experience there is that my aunt and her roommate were in each room up the stairs. They were both, like, you know, in and out of sleeping. And they both hear right in their ear, each one of them at the same time heard, "Get out. Get out." And they both were like, oh no. So they, I mean, that's, I imagine that's not what they said, but, you know, just it's me saying it. They both got up at the same time.
Oh my God.
Both looked, or like opened their doors to their bedrooms, and their bedrooms looked at each other because they're both across the thing, the upstairs, and they said, did you hear something? And they both were saying, no, I mean, yeah, we heard something. Did you say something? Did you come in here and tell me something? And nope, neither one of them had.
No.
The side story behind that also is their bathtub would fill up with hair.
Wait,
And
what?
they'd find hair, not like full hair, but like they'd find hair in the bathtub after they had cleaned it and nobody had taken a shower or done anything.
Ew.
And it was like a ball of hair, not cat hair, because they didn't have cats, and they had one dog, but they didn't bathe them in that tub.
Yeah.
They would find balls of like old wispy gray hair in their bathtub after cleaning it, and then they'd be like, oh, I guess we should just clean this again. They clean it and they find more, and they keep finding hair there, and they're like, well, this is not this is not someplace we should be.
Yo, if
Yeah.
this happens to any of our listeners or anybody that any of our listeners know, seriously, for science, Ziploc that shit. Like, you need to hold on to that shit. Just go to your grandma's, grandpa's, uncle's, aunts, whoever the hell's house. Ziploc that shit. Like, sorry, go ahead. Just somebody needs to keep it.
I don't know why they didn't try to keep it, to be like, hey, we need to go check this out and see where it's coming from. But I guess, it's kind of like if you're sitting there watching a UFO.
Yeah.
You really aren't going to take your camera out, and for the most part, if you see it, you're kind of just staring at it.
Yep.
You're not going to, your first thought is not going to be like, man, I should really film this.
Yeah.
You just stare at it because you don't want to look away and for it to disappear. So I think that's very similar thoughts on how they were.
Mm-hmm.
And it would just, after they'd leave, it would go away. Like they couldn't find it again.
What do you mean?
So,
like they would throw it in the trash can and it would be gone?
No, like it would just, they'd go back, like they go try to tell somebody else in the house, and then they come back and it wasn't there anymore.
Dude, no.
And so they just were beside themselves. And from what they told me is that, like, later on in life, as I got older, when you're young, your aunts, and especially my aunts and uncles, were very, like, playful and funny, and they like to make jokes and scare us. They told me, and, later on when I got older, they told me, oh, some of these are jokes. But when I got older, I asked them about that house, and they said, no, that was not a joke. That stuff happened, and we left that house because of that, and we will never go back to that county.
Remote viewer.
One theory behind shadow people is that they are remote viewers, and that is their presence. So, like, somebody's remote viewing a location, and, like, that's their consciousness, their presence, their whatever that's showing up in a spot. And so the remote viewer is only, like, partially aware of what they're seeing. It's like remote viewing is, like, really strange because remote viewers generally have, like, different sets of skills. Some people can, like, understand, like, temperatures and colors and sizes, but they don't get, like, specific nouns, right? Other remote viewers will just see, like, words. They'll just see, like, they would look around, like, the room and, like, be able to start reading the notes on the wall or, like, the print or, like, a street sign or something like that. And so in, like, government experiments and stuff, with the Pentagon remote viewing programs, they'll have remote viewers that, like, all kind of have a really high success rate, where it'll be 7 out of 10, which is insane for somebody sitting in a bunker with no idea what the hell they're looking for. It'll be like they'll have, like, a bunch of people, each one have 7 or 8 out of 10 kind of success rate with their remote viewing, and they all kind of have their own specialties. So it's like 3 of them will have high success rates in, like, temperature and sizes, and 3 of them or 4 of them will have high success rate with, like, colors and with this. And so the remote viewers will have their target. They'll have, like, a blind target in front of them that'll just be delivered to them that day. They'll take down their notes. They'll do whatever their process is for remote viewing, and then it'll be sent back to whoever made the request to the remote viewers, and then people have to put it together and be like, oh, it's a building that's this size, that's this color, here's the signage that's outside of the building, here's the temperature, we can blah 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 blah, and, like, then they start to piece it together like you would with clues for anything else, right? But they use the remote viewers to kind of, like, get a basic peripheral view of a situation. And so, like, there's the theory that, like, with popping up at, like, nuclear bases and shit, it's like that's a spy. Yeah. That's a remote viewer, like, popping up and being like, what am I looking at here? Okay, I need to go try to find this because that's what my mission is right now. Like,
I imagine
crazy shit.
I imagine, just sitting in the remote viewers come into the room, there's like, here's your mission today. The remote viewer sits there, looks around, is like, did you get my rider? I ordered, it looked kind of like Ozzy. I ordered a bunch of only green M&Ms, and I see a few red ones in there. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to get all those nuclear codes right, so...
Was it Alpha, Omega, or was it, Beta, Alpha? I'm having a hard time remembering.
Yeah. And I ordered the glass bottle Coke, and that is a regular can Coke. So I think I really got to go back to the Hilton.
Just a bunch of pre-Madonna remote viewer.
Yeah. It's like I really need the fuel, and that caffeine is just much better with pure sugar and not high fructose corn syrup.
You know they would be addicted to Diet Coke because there's a weird cult around Diet Coke
The
drinkers.
aspartame.
Yes. The aspartame.
Aspartame. Oh, and that is their name. And that is the remote viewers team name. They're the aspartame.
Aspartame.
Yeah, and they all drink Diet Cokes.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think we
I like Diet Coke. I'm one of them.
Oh, no.
She is one of them.
Get the net.
And now on to Gilbert's story.
I can say without a doubt now, looking back, 10, 12 years later, it completely changed my perspective on things. If anything, I was almost like kind of an arrogant, militant atheist, right? So I always consider myself like agnostic on a good day, but there was one point in my life in my early 20s, so it would have been around 2011, 2012. Long of it, short of it, early 20s, I hopped trains, traveled around the country and stuff that way. That was a thing that I did. And so this one time I was in northern Florida, right? And I was it was terrible. So I was in this very, 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 very small town in northern Florida. To give you an idea of how small it was, there was one light and one McDonald's, and on the long distance bus which took people between towns that I was riding on at one point, I was told by my mentor who taught me how to hop trains, Kyle, rest in peace. I was told by him when I was getting ready to go there. He said, go up to the bus driver and tell him to drop you off at the McDonald's. And I remember my response to him during that phone call being, what the hell do you mean drop me off at the McDonald's? He's like, trust me, he'll know what you mean. I'm like, all right. So we were like 20 miles away, eventually get to town. The bus driver literally is just like, all right, this is your stop, and drops me off at this McDonald's, right? It's, I don't know, maybe 5 o'clock in the evening, 6 o'clock in the evening. It would have been in the fall. And so it was like still kind of that bluish, orangish kind of like lighting outside. The sun hadn't fully set, right? It was the early, late evening kind of vibes, right? And so I get dropped off at this McDonald's, and when I get dropped off, I remember looking over and I see this woman and this guy, and they were pretty peculiarly, is that a word?
Yeah.
They were dressed in a very unique manner, right? It was black and a specific shade of purple. And for anybody in the Wiccan community or has been around the Wiccan community, you know the exact shade of purple that I'm talking about right now. So it was that vibe. I have family ties or history. Don't want to reveal too much for certain folks. But folks in my family identify and are Wiccan, right? So they very much knew what I was looking at. It was like, oh wow, it's a witch, no disrespect. I mean, that's like in my upbringing, that's just like, oh, they're Presbyterian, it's just like, okay, whatever. But I saw them, knew who they were, whatever. Fast forward, so I had been instructed by Kyle to when I get to the McDonald's, there's going to be a traffic light on my left if my back is to the McDonald's, and there is going to be a long empty street to my right. I should just start walking down the empty street for about a mile until I cross some railroad tracks. Immediately on the other side of the railroad tracks, there's a dollar store, right? So I'm like, cool, right? So my mentor told me, I'm going that way. So start walking down the road, walk about a mile, right? Get on the other side of the railroad tracks, of course, right there's a dollar store. And in between the railroad tracks and the dollar store, there's a kind of a gravel service road. And the service road goes on farther than I can see, right? It's just a straight road that just like keeps cutting. And there's a forest on the right side. When you're facing all this, there's a forest on the right side, and there's a swamp on your left. Again, this is Florida. There's swamps, right? So
everywhere.
Yeah. So I was instructed that there was an old burned out house that was a great spot for train hoppers to kind of stay in while they were waiting for trains to come through. It was a safe spot in the woods. just a little ways past this dollar store if you follow the service road. Again, it's getting to be kind of late evening, right? So it's starting to get dark at this point. And so I start walking down the service road. I walk maybe, 200 yards down this service road. And in my mind, I'm not seeing any burned out house or anything anywhere. I'm just seeing train tracks, gravel road, forest on my right. And so I'm like, all right, I need to find a spot to like basically go up in the woods, camp for the night, and be away from the main road far enough nobody's gonna see me or mess with me while I'm sleeping, trespassing in the middle of the night. And so go up into the woods, find a spot that I think is like kind of comfy, something that's close enough to the railroad tracks that if a train comes through and stops, I can get out, I can get on it in time, but far enough away that if any cars are on the service road, right, nobody's gonna see me, right? So I find a spot. I'm chilling. Fast forward a few hours. Now, if you've ever hopped trains before or know anybody or know anything about the life, trains are a really, really great way to get from point A to point B if you literally don't care how long it takes or if a bunch of other letters get injected between point A and point B. So it's the first night. I had only been there for maybe 3-4 hours, and a train comes through and it stops, right? And the importance behind the spot is it's what's called a siding. A siding is where there's 2 sets of tracks, and the second set of tracks is long enough that a train can literally pull over to the side and stop. And that allows what's called a crew change, right? So the conductor gets out, any of the extra crew gets out, they get into their little, train company's car or truck, and a new crew gets in, they drive off. They're basically trading out shifts, right? That's what's great about the spot. It's not in the middle of a train yard. It's not in the middle of a city or something where it's like you have to deal with like armed security and all this crap. It's like middle of nowhere.
Yeah, you can just hop right on.
Yeah, you only have to keep your eyes on the back of the head of like 3 people and make sure they don't see you while you're hopping on a train. It's perfect, right? So if a train's going west, pointing west from where I'm sitting, then like that's the train I need to be on, basically. And so I'm up in the woods, train comes in, 9 o'clock at night. I'm like, oh my, heck yes. Like, I'm so stoked right now. Like, I can't believe it. Within a handful of hours, I already found the train that's right for me. This never happens. Like, you never only wait 5 or 6 hours. That's insane. So I come running out of the woods. And granted, I have this massive traveling backpack on, right? So I have about 60-70 pounds of gear on my back, right? Yeah. Just full hiking backpack. Come running out of the woods, step out of the woods onto the gravel road just before I get to the train, and then boom, spotlight comes on. I obviously turn and I look straight down this gravel road, and there's a cop car parked about, maybe 100 yards away from me with the spotlight on, shining straight at me, right? So it's just straight road. I'm just a deer in the headlights. Like,
literally.
Yeah, like, it is obviously me standing there, right? And I'm like, shit. And so, like, I go to run back into the woods. As, naturally, it's like, run. So I start running back up into the woods, right? I hear, and, like, this car, or the cop car, is like speeding up down the gravel road. I literally just appeared in front of them, clearly about to hop a train. And they start speeding down this gravel road. I only have, it felt like minutes. It was probably just a few seconds of me just like trying to be like, how far into the woods can I go before the cop gets to where I'm at? And, there's a pursuit that's happening, like, on
quick
foot.
Math.
Or something.
Quick math.
Yeah. And so I'm like, is there a tree? Is there a bush? Is there, anything that I can, like, jump and hide behind? Anything. Well, no, there wasn't. And, like, the way, again, swamp on the other side of the tracks. The reason why there was a forest on that side is it was on, like, a slight hill. So imagine running up a slight, dirty hill with a road at the bottom, and like no real ground cover, and a spotlight just like straight up Splinter Cell style, you know, is like coming through the woods, and you're watching the edge of the spotlight getting closer to you, and you're just like shit, and you're like looking anywhere. And and I made one of the dumbest decisions, or best decisions later, like, of my life. I just threw my bag down on the ground and I laid down. And the spotlight comes up. The cop is perfectly parallel to me, right? Comes up, and the cop just shines the light straight on me. I'm maybe, I don't know, 50 yards, right, from the road. This cop is shining a spotlight straight on me. He stops, you know, it's the whole classic, like, you can hear the brake squeak, you know, like, brake squeak, stops straight on me, is looking right at me. And I'm just laying flat on the ground with my backpack next to me. And I'm just laying there, and I'm frozen, and I'm a little freaked out. And then about a minute goes by. And then about 2 minutes go by. And I'm starting to get a little bit confused. I'm also starting to kind of come down from like adrenaline. I remember kind of being a little bit annoyed at a point. Like, in my mind, I was just like, all right, I'm going to jail.
Just come get me. Don't torture me.
Yeah, I was like, just say something already. Yeah. Like, Jesus, you know, this is weird. This is a mind game, you know, that's happening here. And I'm sitting there, and I remember I, like, pulled out my phone, and I texted my partner at the time. And this is how eventually I knew it was at, like, 9:30 at night when this happened. But I had texted them, and I was just like, hey, I'm gonna go to jail tonight. I'll message you about this later, but da-da-da-da-da. That's like a terrible text to get from somebody while you're at work. Even though they knew what I was doing, they were just like, you know, what the fuck, da-da-da-da-da. And they start messaging me back. Some time goes by. And this is where the first weird moment I was aware of, like, kind of, like, happens. I woke up. At some point, either from a crash of adrenaline or from something, I passed out. I don't know. I still don't know what the heck it was. I've never had a problem in my life. I've traveled a bunch by myself. I've hopped trains a bunch by myself. I've hitchhiked. I've done all of it, you know. I've never had an issue with, like, falling asleep or passing out. And granted, the day before I got to this place, I had been in my house where I was living at the time. I was super well rested. I wasn't malnourished or anything like that. And, you know, I'm going into this situation as a skeptic, right? So, like, I just woke up, and I remember coming to breath, just kind of like, like, just freaked out immediately when I woke up, because I thought, like, the last memory I had was a spotlight shining on me. And just thinking about this, I looked at my phone. There's the text message of me texting my partner, and then, like, just 40 text messages afterwards of them being like, what the hell's going on? I'm at work, da-da-da, you got me freaked out, da-da-da. And just, like, for hours, they've been trying to message me. And I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? And, like, I'm trying to come to, and I eventually kind of get up the nerve. I slowly creep up. This time I don't jump out into the gravel road. I look to the sides. Nothing. It's been like 3 or 4 hours. There's nobody there. The train's gone. The cop's gone. Nothing. It's gone. I just woke up. I fell asleep with a cop with a spotlight literally shining straight on me, or passed out or whatever, and then woke up to it not. It was just like blinking, right? And so that was weird, right? Fast forward, like with all good train hopping, it was taking days. So every other day or so for the next week, I would make the long walk back into town, or to the single McDonald's, I should say. I think there was like a Pilot gas station there or something. And at McDonald's, that was like it. But make the long walk, go there, charge my phone, right? Every now and then, I think I went to like the dollar store and got some like Hormel's chili, you know, best cold chili. Hey, you know, that's what you got to eat.
Hey, the dollar store is a lifesaver sometimes. Real. If you're out in the middle of nowhere nowhere, because they are literally everywhere in the middle of nowhere.
It's the only general I'll follow is that Dollar General.
You could have more dollar stores than houses in some towns, so
I've seen it.
and they're always by a railroad track. It's kind of funny.
That's true.
They're always by a railroad track.
So over the next couple days, I kept seeing the same couple again. That kind of, I'm just gonna say it because my family who is in this group would not take it as a bad thing, so I'm not gonna say it that way. But this witchy couple, right? You know, just witchy vibes. All respect, and I kept seeing them everywhere I went. I'd see them in the dollar store. I'd see them standing in line at the McDonald's. I'd see them down the road waiting to cross the street. They just stood out to me, right? And anyways, fast forward a few days. I had been there for about a week. Second to last day I was there, I eventually find this burned out house, right? And there's pricker bushes that are about 9-10 feet tall, and I see this like tin roof way the hell out into the bush, surrounded by pricker bushes higher than I could see. Like I had to step up onto the railroad tracks and like stand on them to like look up to kind of see a tin roof, and I'm like, that must be this house. In my mind I was all like, man, I bet you if I get there there'll be an easy trail out of there, right? So I'm just gonna tough it up. I'm gonna go through these 9-foot tall pricker bushes next to a swamp. I'm gonna get in there. I'm gonna get to this house. That'll be a lot better than sleeping out on the ground where there's like cops and crap. And so I made it there, and spoiler alert, there wasn't an easy way out of there, but I did find a massive kind of like old camouflage netting, this like weird netting crap. And so I was like, well, this is kind of sweet. Wrapped it up, put it in my backpack, right? Put it on the side of my backpack. Eventually left, went back to the McDonald's the second to last time, I guess, for the story, or last time for the story. Went back to the McDonald's, charged my phone, started walking back to the railroad tracks at the end of the day. Sitting there with my, 99-cent coffee, just happy as can be, walking back to spend another long night waiting for a train that doesn't seem to be coming. It's been a week at this point, right? Just me out in the woods. Just like bored as hell.
You're very patient.
And so I start getting back, and anyways, I'm approaching the railroad tracks with the dollar store on the other side, and a train finally pulls up and is going in my direction, and I am just over the moon. I am ecstatic. I'm like, yes, 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 yes. Like I can hear it hitting its brakes, it's slowing down. I'm like, yes, fuck yes, fuck yes. So I start running with my like 80 pounds of stuff on my back. I'm just like basically hobbling down the road. I'm like trying to get there. And I make it, the train's going, and I'm so excited. And so I start running along the side, and granted, I'm on the swamp side, so I run along the side of the train tracks as far as I could before I get to the swamp. And the train goes, it stops, and I'm like, yes. And so I start kind of like hobbling along the like big old railroad track, kind of like stones, and like trying to find the right kind of car that I want to hop into that I can ride, right? Not every train car you can ride easily. So I'm getting there, and finally go to find one, and guess what? There's a cop that pulls up on the other side right when I go to like start climbing up onto a ladder to get onto the train, right? And I'm like, shit. And so like I jump off the rocks, and I'm up to about nipple high into like swamp water at this point with my backpack and everything. The train starts to move. The cop's not moving on the other side of the train on the service road, and is shining his light down. I pull out the camouflage net from earlier, pull it over top of my head, and basically just go like kind of like 4-year-old with a monster under their bed. Like, if I put this over me, then maybe they won't see me.
It was the cloak of invisibility.
Basically was. So train pulls off, right? Cop shining its light. They kind of like look around. I can see their light going over me, and they just take off. And I'm like, and this is granted, so this is early to mid-November, right? In northern Florida. It's not freezing cold, but it's not warm enough to come out of the swamp.
Just a bit chilly.
Yeah, just it's like in the 50s, and you're in like cold ass, dirty swamp water. So like, I come out, I am just soaking wet with mud and whatever the hell else like on top of me. I just throw that camouflage netting crap off of me, and I'm just like, I'm just pissed at this point. It's been a week. I've already dealt with cops twice. Like, it just, this little town sucks, right? In my mind.
You've been eating McDonald's, the dollar store.
Can't be helping my mind at this point.
No. Might have got some McChicken poisoning by then.
Probably.
Yeah, or the fish fillet, I guess. The fish fillet, some poisoning. Some lead in there, iron.
So yeah, I crawl out of the swamp after the cops leave. And, of course, I get up onto the tracks. I look over to the dollar store, and who do I see but that same witchy couple?
Are they just staring at you?
They're literally, I don't remember which one, but one of them is just like smoking a cigarette outside of this dollar store. This is like their neighborhood dollar store. I think this might be the only grocery-ish store in town. This is just where they're at, you know. I'm ready to give up at this point. And in my mind, you know, I remember again what my mentor taught me is just like, yo, if you see the same people like all the time while you're trying to hop a train, like go up and ask them about the train routes. He's like, nobody knows train routes and scheduling better than the people that live next to the train tracks, because they get stopped by them every single week.
Yeah.
They constantly have to deal with, if I don't leave my house by this time, I'm gonna have to stop and wait for a half an hour for this train to leave. He's like, just go ask them. Like 90% of the time they don't care. So I see them again, soaking wet. I'm just like, fuck it, dude. Like, and so I see them walk over, and this is where it starts to get weird that I'm aware of, right? I walk up, and before I say a word to them, this lady, the witchy lady, she's a younger woman. She's like maybe like 5-6 years older than me. She says, your dad used to be a coal miner. And so obviously I choked up a little bit. I was like, well, what? She's like, you have a really old name. What do you... Pardon me? And she's like, your dad, did he have black lung his whole life? She's like, I'm gonna help you. What are you talking? What? She's like, do you want to come with me and my partner back to my house? We can throw your clothes in the dryer, help you warm up. We'll help you find a train going west. Now, what's messed up, and what I know for a fact, even in my skeptical mind, especially skeptical at the time, so my name's Gilbert Bentley Jr. Father's name's Gilbert Bentley. My dad was a coal miner, and he was born in the 1930s. He had black lung his whole life. At that point in my life, I had maybe told 2-3 people any of that. Very few people knew anything about my biological father, his history, things like that. There were a couple of other things, but I can't really say without giving away things that I don't want to give away. There were some other things that she said too. Regardless, the whole situation caused me to completely like choke up. I hadn't said a damn thing to this person, you know. But you know, hey, she had a Solomon seal symbol on one of her rings. I knew she was one of the good ones, you know. That's how I was brought up, and yeah. So I was like, shit, okay, well, I trust you now. You know, like, you're about to start reading me off my social security number. Like,
that's next.
Yeah. And so she invites me, and frankly, after the week I just had, all right, cool, fair game. And so we start walking down the gravel road, right, the service road. We get about half a mile down it. I haven't really said anything at this point. She just, it was very small talk. It was just, after that, I was just kind of like half in shock. And then she's like, how are you doing? Do you need anything to eat? Da 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 da. I've seen you a bunch around town. I'm like, yeah, I've seen you a bunch too. Da 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 da. It's small talk, right? So get about a half a mile down. She points into the woods to a large tree. And this is when things started to make sense. She points into the woods into a large tree. And she says, see that tree there? I'm like, yeah. A black man was killed by the police there. They hung him. If the police are ever bothering you, go hide underneath that tree. They won't be able to find you. He'll protect you. And like, I'm getting chills now thinking about this. Obviously, that was the tree that I ended up underneath, where I was in full view of the spotlight just a few days earlier. And the cops acted like they couldn't see me, and it confused the hell out of me. That was the tree.
That's insane.
I hadn't said a damn thing to her. And like, anyways, so a few small heart attacks later, again, I had not said, I'm so skeptical at the time. I was trying to look for ways that she was reading me. I was confused, all these things. We go to her house, right? So we keep walking. I change out of my swamp clothes at this point. She throws them in the dryer, and she's basically, I forget what time it was exactly, but she's like, hey, you got a few hours till the train that you want is coming, and sorry, backtrack a little bit. It's bad for storytelling. Eventually the service road connected to a neighborhood, and we walked a little ways into the neighborhood, went to her house, right? So she lives right by there, and that's also why she was always at the dollar store and everything. This is like walking distance-ish from her place. So we're chilling there. She makes me a bracelet kind of thing with some like charms and stuff on it while we're sitting there talking. We're just talking about like life and shit like that. My clothes are in the dryer. Finally got some fresh clothes on. Gets to be that time. Obviously say thank you. I'm still overwhelmed by everything at this point, but I don't want to lose face, especially being as skeptical as I was at the time. She gives me the bracelet and wishes me off on my way, right? So I step out of the house. I don't get maybe 10, 15 feet into the street. It's pitch black where the houses and stuff are on the street. It's completely pitch black. A massive, like, just all black German Shepherd just starts running straight towards me. And I remember, I've rarely had to do this. I mean, I always traveled with a knife in my pocket. I pull out my knife. I have it next to my chest. I'm just kind of like holding it. And I just remember saying to myself over and over again, like, please don't do this, please don't do this, please don't do this. Because I thought this dog was about to, like, attack me, right? And I didn't want to do anything to this dog. And I'm just holding my knife and I'm like, please don't do this, please don't do this, please don't do this. Dog runs up, stops right in front of me, sits down, and does the classic, like, and just like happy as hell to see me. And I'm like holding my knife, just like clutching it. And I'm like, I'm just like freaked out. And so with my free hand, I stick my hand out, and the dog just starts doing that little like kneading thing where it just starts like nuzzling its head like into my hand. And I'm like, okay. And so I start petting the dog. Dog's totally nice, totally cool. And I was like, oh, hey, hey, buddy. Like, totally thought you were about to rip me to shreds, you know? And I'm like, okay, I gotta make this train. I gotta make this train. So, keep walking. The dog starts walking with me, right? Get down to the train tracks, start following the service road, get to about that halfway point, right? And I go, and I'm sitting there, and it's freezing cold, and I'm just sitting there. This dog's just running back and forth. There'll be like a random sound, and the dog will run off into the woods and come back, and it's hanging out with me. And I'm just kind of talking to this dog and hanging out, having a great time, you know? And eventually I hear, and it's a car pulling up onto the service road. Before the lights come on, I realize it's a cop car. And I'm like, shit. And so I'm like, get up, run up into the woods. At this point, after this many days, I learned there's a safe spot where I can be where I have the slip on the cops. So get up into the woods to a safe spot. And I'm sitting there behind kind of a large tree and a bush. And I'm chilling. Dog's hanging out with me the whole time. Cop comes in, spotlight comes on. Shines. You can just see it shining through the forest again. It's pitch black in this forest, right? Spotlight just slowly, like, just slowly creeping through, looking through the woods. I have all the time in the world. I'm like a half mile down this road, right? So I'm like, I'm fine. I'm like 7,500 yards up into this forest. Like, even if they do come out, I can make a run for it. I'm good.
Yeah, you got time.
So spotlight travels through. They don't even slow down. They just keep going by. Dog hangs out with me the whole time. So the cop goes by. Never see the cop come back out. That makes sense to me because there's a neighborhood attached at the end. So it just circled through. I'm chilling there. Dog's hanging out with me the whole night, right? That was all at about 10 o'clock. Gets to be, let's say, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm still wide awake. Obviously, I've had a lot on my mind with, like, the conversation with this witch, as one-sided as it was, very much hit home, and everything else. This dog's just hanging out with me, like, all evening, and so I'm talking to it, like, I haven't really got to talk to or see people for days, right? Other than some, like, confused McDonald's employees. And
were they confused because you asked for ice cream and they were like, why does anybody come here and ask for ice cream? It never works.
The machine's broke. That's the only thing this town had, was a working McDonald's ice cream machine.
Oh, and that's why that's why it was the only restaurant, because it ran everybody else out of business.
Exactly. So kind of in the last wave of, like, wooey stuff that happens here, I started to see another light that comes on over to my side. It would have been east, and it starts to grow, and it starts to get brighter and brighter. And I remember to this day very specifically, like, I thought it felt like I had been sitting in somebody's backyard and they turned on their, like, motion light behind me, right? And so this whole time I'd been coming up really deep into the woods, almost exclusively late at night in the spot, and I was like, am I in somebody's backyard? So I turn around and I look, and I can't see a source of a light, and, like, it's just glowing.
Thank you so much for listening to the Black Cat Report. Remember to like and subscribe on your streaming service and follow us on Instagram. If you have a paranormal story or any ideas you would like to send us, please email us at contact@blackcat.report.
So fast forward, this pulse keeps moving and backing out, almost like the
pendulum.
Yeah, or almost like the tides, like on a shore, just kind of like coming in and fading out, but there's still that second and third layer of water that comes in afterwards, and it crashes and it comes in, so it has that kind of a vibe. And then it proceeds to pass through. So I eventually see the end of it. The whole time I'm chilling with this dog, and I remember talking to this dog, just being like, what the fuck is going on? And I'm just, like, petting this dog for my sanity at this point. It probably doesn't even have any hair left on its head. I'm just rubbing it so hard, like, all right, little man, we're in this, I'm freaking out.
We're in this together.
Yeah. About an hour or so after it passes, I don't remember the exact amount of time, but it was a fair amount of time for me to be fully freaked out and then come down from that. A train did come in, and it was going west, and I could finally go catch this goddamn train that I've been waiting on for a week. And at this point, all I wanted to do was to leave this weird ass little town.
Yeah.
And train comes in. I'm like, I'm up, I'm ready, I got my bag, And so I start running, find the car that I want to get on, go in, climb onto it. I'm like, yes, I finally make it. Right as I'm climbing onto this car, a cop pulls onto the service road.
Of course course it does.
and shines the light. And I'm like, shit. So I climb around the other side of the car on the swamp side, climb up the ladder. Cop comes through with the spotlight. At that point, I'm way up high on this ladder, and I'm barely holding on with my 80 pounds worth of stuff on me. Cop shining the light, goes slow, doesn't see me on the other side on the ladder, starts to creep past to start looking at the rest of the cars, and my hands give out, and I fall. So after falling about 10-12 feet, slam into the second set of railroad tracks in the gravel. Luckily, I had 80 pounds worth of clothing and crap on my back.
That probably would have hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I straight up landed like a turtle, just kind of and start wobbling.
I can't get up.
Yeah, if you've ever fallen in a hiking backpack, you know exactly what I mean. It's very awkward when you're fully on your back. It was like that. And so I'm like, shit. And so I finally waddle my way up and go to start climbing up the ladder again. The spotlight shines over to where this loud crashing sound has happened, and the dog pops up right there at the spotlight.
Whoa.
The cops see the dog, and they proceed to follow the dog with the spotlight as the dog goes underneath the train, waddles around a little bit, kind of moves through the area, comes out, and then goes into the woods. And I literally watched them with the spotlight follow this dog off into the woods, shine it back to where I was, which at this point I was a couple steps up onto the ladder on the side of the train, and then they proceed to drive on. Train jerks, starts to move. I climb into the actual spot I was trying to get into this whole time. I look over the edge. The dog is literally sitting on the service road, just smiling at me.
He did his duty.
And I just wave at it and say thank you, and I leave.
I think would have been creepier. You're just oh, these people know exactly who I am. If you looked over and the dog was in the forest and those two people were in the forest just pointing, and you heard, there goes another one.
Well, what I had found out later about that spot where I got on, so eventually made my way to New Orleans, met up with some other train hoppers that I knew. I asked about that specific spot, and they were like, dude, you're effing crazy, trying to hop a train out of there. And I'm like, why? And they're like, dude, a train got hijacked out of there. The police have been all over that area. They've been calling in a half an hour before they stop, and the police have been coming up there and waiting and looking to make sure that they can do their crew changes. So that's why there were so many cops there, and that's why it was so intense the whole time. A train had straight up gotten hijacked. It was 2 months before I was there, so they were super heightened security.
Did they ever find the people that hijacked it?
I have no clue.
So I have a theory.
It was the witches.
It was.
We can't just go around blaming witches.
No, but think about this, right? So every time there was a train there, they were near the dollar store.
Yeah.
And you saw them there, and they also knew when your train departed. I'm not blaming all witches. I'm saying these specific people that knew exactly when your train was going to be there are already by there. Think about crimes when the killers come back to the scene of the crime, and they're always walking by, and that Family Dollar is right by the railroad.
I'm going to blame the Family Dollar.
It could have been the Family Dollar.
I'm going to blame the Family Dollar. How do you think they get their low prices?
They have to be hijacking trains, and that's why
we go.
And that's why they're always by train tracks.
Store of the day.
Dollar General. They'll always be there. Everything isn't $1, but it'll be crappy. And remember, always service with a frown.
Store of the day.
That was just straight up high strangeness. Last one on my personal repertoire, which also crosses over into Joey's and also into Betsabe's. The most perfect way possible to end 2020.
It really was.
Literally, Betsabe sitting there on the back porch at a friend's house just down the street from our studio, explaining about why our friend should watch a UFO documentary. I step off the porch slightly away from the house, and I'm smoking a cigarette, as I do, and in my true fashion, I yell, "What the fuck is that?" And I point up at the sky, and we literally have one of our friends who had just returned from duty, where they're in the Air Force. They step off. One of our best, their wife, one of our best friends, also steps off the porch. Joey and Betsabe step off the porch, and we all see what, in my mind, in my memory, looks like something that, picture a stoplight that just appears way the hell too high up in the sky, in the clear sky. And this is at about 7 o'clock. It's still kind of sunlight outside. Just a stoplight that just appears up in the sky. We all step off and we're all just staring at it. This thing's like blood red.
Wasn't moving. Wasn't blinking.
No, and then it just kind of like fades out, and we're like, oh well, damn, I don't know what the hell that was. Da 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 da. Everybody starts stepping away. I'm still smoking my cigarette, kind of facing them. With they have their backs to where this pops up, and then it comes back on again in the same spot, and everybody rushes back over and looks at it. This happened for probably a total of like 45-50 seconds, maybe.
It didn't look like it was like a cloud that, like, you know, when you
Dear
see
God, no.
when you see
No,
stars
no.
when you see stars obstructed by the clouds or something like that, like they disappear. But it didn't seem like there was clouds blocking it, and that's why it stopped. It just looked like it went on, off, on, off. It was like someone was flicking a switch almost, but it was so crazy.
And like something that trips me out, because like obviously that piqued my interest, piqued everybody's interest, but I looked up reports from MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, about where we live in Asheville, North Carolina, and this same light appearing in the same spot in the sky, appearing in the same time of day, has reports going back 30 and 40 years. There's reports of people in our area, like literally like groups of people gathering at the local grocery store, seeing this light appear in the sky. So like that shit just blows my mind, dude.
Yeah.
That's just cool as hell. Like,
It happened.
it's always somebody smoking a cigarette or hanging out in a jacuzzi. That's 90% of UFO stories.
Yep.
Somebody steps outside to smoke a cigarette, or they're hanging out in a jacuzzi.
And I want to say, honestly, like I said earlier, it's not like it's not like we saw it and then wanted to be like, oh, let's take out our phones.
No.
We literally just looked at it, and never once did it cross my mind. I don't know how some people are just like, as they see something, they're like, oh man, I really need to get my phone and see this. I guess it's a different type of mindset. I was just like, I just want to look at this. And what is it?
What
Like,
pisses me off / like makes me laugh like to this day is 4 of the 5 people there are professional photographers and videographers.
Yeah.
None of them pulled out a camera and look. We all just stopped and were like, WTF? Like, literally, what are we looking at right now? And then we had a second chance, and we all still did the same thing.
Yeah, we just looked at
like,
it. Because we didn't want to,
huh?
like, you always think about it. You just don't want it to disappear. Like, if you feel like if you blink or you, like, move away, it's gone. And you don't yeah.
It just like does not compute. You're just looking at it and it's just like, this isn't blending with reality for me. Like that there's not normally a stoplight that high up in the sky.
No. Thank you for listening to the Black Cat Report. Remember to like and subscribe on your streaming service and follow us on Instagram. If you have a paranormal story you would like us to research into or to tell, please send us an email at contact@blackcat.report. Up next is a special bonus story. And we have one more story. And again, it was 5 of us. We went to Brown Mountain and
Linville Gorge.
And we were like, oh, let's go hiking, because we had all heard about these things called the Brown Mountain Lights. And we decided that we wanted to spend the night up on the mountain and just see what it was like. So we just decided, okay, cool, let's go stay up there. We'll cook hot dogs, we'll bring them up, we'll just have a grand old merry time, a good old camping adventure. And we're sitting there, we had a little whiskey, but it wasn't like an absurd amount. We were feeling good. We weren't drunk or anything like that. So we all are just sitting there, and we see a campfire down, we're on top of a mountain, so we can look down and see like people in the valley area. And we look down, and campfire, cool. But then we see just this kind of orb light, I would describe it as. And what's described as, and when people talk about the Brown Mountain lights, it's described as an orb. So we see this orb, and it just, from what I remember, it's in the woods, but not in the woods. So we're kind of thinking like, okay, maybe it's a headlight. Maybe it's a headlight of a car.
Somebody walking on a trail.
Somebody walking with a flashlight. And so we just keep staring because we're like, cool. Like we just want to make sure what we're seeing is what we're seeing. And then it just like it moves so fast down the mountain, and in no way that a person could run. A car could go, because at that point we had looked during the day to see, and there was no roads that went that way.
That same distance during the day, during daylight, would have taken us, because we had just made that hike, literally would have taken us about an hour to go the distance that we were seeing this thing move.
Yeah, in a couple seconds. Yeah, which is crazy.
You guys had all seen it?
Yeah, we all saw it.
Like literally all of us just watched it.
And slowly it just starts coming down the mountain. So like basically we're looking at the top of a mountain, and then down into the valley is like the people, having a campfire. And we see it come and down the mountain really fast comparatively to anything we had seen. Yeah. And then so I'm honestly, in my mind, I'm sitting there like, this is like coming at us. Yeah. Like this is going to find us, where we are. And so all of us are sitting there just watching it. And again, none of us were thinking of it, and most of us were all videographers and photographers. We're thinking about it going, we should take out our phones and film this. And so we sit there and we just watch it, and and it gets farther, closer, like farther away from the campfire down there, and comes closer to us, and then it just disappeared. And we're like, kind of like looking around like, did this really happen? And even now some of us are just like, we don't, like, when you see something that's that different, we ask ourselves, did it happen? And even the most skeptical of us was like, I saw lights. I can't tell. I don't know what they were. I don't know if they're paranormal or not. But I still saw them. And the same with the red light, is we all saw it, and we all were just like, we just don't know what it is. Yeah. But we think, most of us think it's very paranormal. It has something to do with the UFO or some kind of paranormal object that we just don't understand yet.
Thank you for listening to the Black Cat Report. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the other side.